He wanted to fix his company from the inside, so he hit the road in disguise. But when his truck broke down in the scorching desert, the only man who stopped to help was the same veteran he once let go. Was it karma, or the chance to finally make things right? The Arizona sun was just beginning to rise when William Perth pulled out of the Transway Logistics lot in a weathered Freightliner Cascadia that had seen better days. The paint was dull, the cab rattled with every bump, and the AC wheezed. But that was the point. He didn't want comfort, he wanted truth. His new name, printed in black block letters on a laminated badge clipped to his vest, was Paul Rourke. No one at the depot had recognized him. He'd grown a short beard, traded his tailored suits for a thrift store shirt, and packed away his Rolex. On the road, he wasn't a CEO, he was just another number in the logbook. William was tired of being fed sanitized reports and filtered dashboards. For months, customer complaints had been climbing. Drivers were quitting without notice. Delivery times were slipping, and he'd heard whispers of dangerous shortcuts in maintenance. His board of directors had offered the usual solutions: fire some mid-level managers, squeeze the budget tighter, push for automation. But William knew better. You can't fix a company like Transway from a corner office. Not when your business lives and dies on the asphalt. He gripped the steering wheel with unsteady hands as he hit the highway, eastbound through the red rock landscapes of central Arizona. The hum of the engine masked his nerves. This wasn't just about the company anymore, it was about him, too. 2 days in, the cracks began to show. At a regional warehouse outside Prescott, he waited nearly 3 hours for a load he'd been scheduled to pick up. No explanation, no apology. When he asked the dock supervisor what the holdup was, he got a cold shrug and a "we're backed up. Take a number." William sat in the cab watching other drivers, especially the older, independent ones, get waved off or bumped down the list. William wrote it all down in a leather-bound notebook tucked in the glove compartment. Later that afternoon, at a dusty truck stop near Black Canyon City, he overheard a conversation between 2 drivers. They were venting about some pencil pusher from corporate who had approved new limits on fuel card usage and slashed per diem allowances. One of them muttered, "These guys have no idea what it's like out here. Never even touched a wrench." William didn't speak up. Instead, he ordered a coffee, sat at a corner, and watched. The waitstaff looked exhausted. The bathrooms were barely stocked. The Transway driver's lounge smelled like mildew and despair. This wasn't the company he had built, or at least thought he had built. That night, parked at a rest area under a blanket of stars, William slept in the cab. It was stifling. The mattress was thin, and a slow oil leak had left the air smelling like a mechanic's garage. But it wasn't the discomfort that kept him awake. It was the guilt. 2 years earlier, in a glass-walled conference room 10 stories above downtown Chicago, William had made the call. A wave of layoffs, mostly veterans, older drivers, and union holdouts. His COO had argued it was necessary. "These guys are too slow. We can hire 2 rookies for the price of one of them." His mind drifted back to that boardroom in Chicago 2 years earlier. Floor-to-ceiling glass, polished wood, and the dull hum of executives discussing necessary reductions. They spoke of drivers like outdated parts to be swapped for cheaper replacements, especially veterans, union members, and those who dared to question policies. When the COO declared, "These guys are too slow, too expensive," William nodded along with the room. Now, he wondered how many lives he'd derailed with that single gesture. By the end of the week, William had traveled over 1,200 miles. He'd experienced backlogged warehouses, rude dispatchers, broken equipment, and truck stops so run down they felt like forgotten outposts from another era. But the real revelation wasn't in the logistics, it was in the faces. He saw men and women pushing through 12-hour drives with stiff joints and aching backs. He saw drivers helping each other patch tires with duct tape and prayer. He saw fatigue behind every wheel, and pride, too. Not in the company, but in each other. On day 8, the desert stretched wide and merciless before him, and the truck began to rattle in a new way. William tapped the dash. The engine temperature was climbing. He was 40 miles from the next major stop. No shade, no trees, just heat, road, and regret. The air conditioning sputtered once, then gave out completely. Within minutes, sweat soaked through his shirt. The steering wheel burned his palms. The truck shuddered and died. William stepped out into the silence, the asphalt radiating up through his boots. The horizon rippled like water. No traffic in sight. He leaned against the cab, dizzy from heat and dehydration. He looked down the road, then back at the broken machine behind him. For the first time in his life, William Perth, CEO, founder, architect of a logistics empire, was stranded. The Mojave heat bore down like punishment. William squinted at the empty highway ahead, the shimmering air turning the road into a wavering ribbon of light. His AC had died hours ago, leaving the cab an oven. He rolled down the window, hoping for a breeze. Nothing. He stepped out onto cracked asphalt that radiated heat like a furnace. All around him stretched an endless desert. No towns, no cell signal, no signs of life. His shirt clung to his back, damp and sticky, as he circled the truck, peering under the hood without understanding a thing. His only bottle of water was nearly gone. He rationed a few sips, then settled on the step outside the cab, eyes fixed on the vacant road. Minutes felt like hours. The sun climbed higher, each second hotter than the last. His thoughts blurred between regrets and desperation. Then, faint at first, came the low, steady rumble of an approaching engine. A dark shape shimmered into view. A deep blue Kenworth, chrome grille shining like a blade. It slowed beside him with a hiss of brakes and idled, its exhaust stirring the burning air. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped down, boots crunching on gravel, sunglasses reflecting the harsh sky. He looked like he'd spent his life on the road. Strong build, tanned arms, sun-bleached shirt. He took in the broken Freightliner and the man slumped beside it. "Truck trouble?" he asked, voice dry as the desert wind. William hesitated. "Yeah, overheated. No cell signal." The man glanced at the engine, then back at William, eyes narrowing. "You look like hell. Got any water left?" "Barely." He nodded and walked back to his rig, pulling a cooler from the side compartment. He tossed William a bottle. "Drink slow. Don't shock your system." The water was cold, a miracle against the searing heat. William drank in careful sips, feeling his mind clear with each swallow. The stranger popped the hood without waiting for permission. "Old model. Coolant is gone. Been running hot for a while. I guess," William admitted, embarrassed. "Guess?" The man scoffed softly. "Lucky you didn't set it on fire." He moved with practiced efficiency, checking hoses, scanning gauges, feeling for heat. William watched, unsure whether to offer help or stay silent. After a while, they sat in the narrow strip of shade cast by the trailer, sharing the last of the cold water. The man wiped sweat from his brow. "Name's Jason. Jason Mallory." William blinked. The name rattled in his head, familiar, but not from their brief conversation. It triggered something from his time behind the corporate desk, echoes of reports and board meetings. Jason leaned back against the tire. "You out of Transway?" William nodded slowly. "Yeah, new guy. Paul Rourke." Jason let out a short laugh, dry and knowing. "Paul Rourke. That's a name straight out of a cheap novel." William forced a weak smile. "I get that a lot." Jason's expression darkened. "I worked for them once, before they decided some of us weren't worth the trouble anymore." William's heart pounded. He tried to keep his face blank. "What happened?" "Same old story," Jason said, voice low. "Big shots stop caring about the road, start chasing numbers. Drivers become liabilities. Doesn't matter how many years you give them. One day you're useful, the next you're gone." He paused, eyes fixed on the horizon's shimmer. "I kept my truck, went independent. It's tougher, but at least the only one screwing me now is the fuel pump." Silence stretched between them. William felt every word sink deep. Jason stood. "I'll tow you to a diner and service station about 40 miles up. You got a strap?" William shook his head, almost ashamed. Jason sighed. "Of course you don't." He retrieved a thick tow strap from his rig, hooking it with practiced hands. "Lucky for you, I'm not heartless." They set off, the Kenworth pulling the wounded freightliner across miles of empty desert. As the sun set, shadows stretched long over the highway. They reached the diner by dusk, a squat building glowing with tired neon, a small oasis of light. Inside, the air was blessedly cool and smelled of coffee and grilled bacon. Jason ordered them both dinner: eggs, hash browns, and bottomless coffee. William kept up the charade of Paul, but felt Jason's eyes on him, weighing, measuring. Halfway through the meal, Jason pointed at William's forearm. "That tattoo, the eagle with the compass." William looked down. The faded ink, a relic of his college ROTC days, stood out against sunburned skin. "I've seen it before," Jason said slowly. "In a photo at the Transway main office. Big framed shot. CEO shaking hands with a senator." His voice hardened. "You were in it." William froze, fork hovering over cold eggs. Jason leaned in, voice low but intense. "Your name's not Paul, is it?" Silence pressed in around them. "Say it," Jason demanded. "William. William Perth." Chairs scraped as Jason stood abruptly, fists clenched at his sides. His voice rose, cutting through the diner's quiet hum. "You're him. You're the one who signed off on sending guys like me packing." William stood slowly, hands open in silent plea. People turned to watch as Jason glared, chest heaving. Without another word, Jason shoved his chair aside and strode out into the night, leaving William alone with the weight of the truth and the bill for 2 unfinished plates of eggs. The diner door slammed shut behind Jason, rattling the fluorescent lights overhead. William stood alone in the hush that followed, feeling every eye in the room shift to him. Whispers swirled, but he ignored them, forcing himself to breathe as he stepped outside into the night's cooler air. Jason waited beside his Kenworth, arms folded, eyes like steel. "So what's your plan, William? Dress up like a driver, play hero, then go back to your office and pretend you care?" William stopped a few feet away, his voice quiet but steady. "I came because something felt wrong. I saw complaints, rising costs, late shipments, and I didn't want to keep hiding behind spreadsheets." Jason scoffed. "So you threw on a secondhand shirt and thought you'd understand the lives you helped ruin?" William hesitated, shame tightening his chest. "I thought I knew this company, but I let people I trusted make the wrong calls, and I signed off without questioning. That's on me." Jason's jaw flexed. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then he turned abruptly, climbed into his cab, and leaned over to pop the passenger door open. "Get in," he growled. They drove for nearly an hour under a moonlit sky, the Kenworth's engine humming low. Neither spoke, the silence thick with unasked questions and raw tension. Finally, they pulled into an old truck stop at the edge of the state line. Rusted pumps sat abandoned. A battered sign buzzed with dying neon. Inside the diner, the smell of stale coffee and old grease clung to the cracked booths. They sat across from each other, the weight of unspoken truths filling the air. Jason broke first. "You know what I tried to do after the layoffs? I built a program to train vets to drive, help them find a purpose again. I raised money, got Transway to match donations. For a while, it worked." William leaned in, listening as Jason's voice hardened. "Then one day I was off the schedule. Just like that, my calls went unanswered. The training collapsed. Guys I promised help were left with nothing." William looked down at his hands. "That wasn't just budget cuts. Someone wanted you out." Jason's eyes burned. "After I left, trucks in my old routes started breaking down more often. Maintenance logs disappeared. Inventory vanished. Dispatchers told me the same name over and over: Daryl Knox." William's stomach twisted. "Knox? He's been with Transway since the early days. Rose up from driver to regional manager." Jason nodded grimly. "He's good at hiding it, but word on the road is he's been skimming repair budgets, taking kickbacks, and running unlogged shipments. When I started asking questions, I became a threat." William pulled his worn notebook from his jacket and slid it across the table. Jason flipped through pages of dates, locations, and breakdown reports, eyes narrowing with each entry. "You've been tracking all this?" Jason asked, voice low. "Trying to find the truth," William replied. "To see where I failed." Jason tapped several entries. These depots, every one under Knox's control. He's orchestrating these failures, using them to cover his theft. William's chest tightened as the pieces clicked together. The delays weren't random. They were planned. Sabotage to hide stolen cargo. Jason exhaled, face grim. "And now that Knox knows you're on the road, he'll send someone to finish this." As if on cue, a sudden crash split the air. A rock smashed through the diner's window, glass spraying across the floor. Both men hit the ground as a black SUV rolled into the lot, headlights glaring through the gaping hole. "Time to move," Jason barked, grabbing William by the arm. They scrambled through the kitchen, pans clattering as they shoved past the startled cook, and burst into the narrow alley behind the building. Jason's Kenworth waited at the end of the lot, its polished grille gleaming in the moonlight. They sprinted across gravel as a shout rang out behind them. A gunshot cracked, a bullet slamming into a metal trash bin inches from William's leg. They dove into the cab. Jason slammed the door, fired up the engine, and threw the truck into gear. Tires screeched as the Kenworth lunged forward. The SUV swung around the diner, headlights sweeping wildly. Another shot punched through the trailer's side, spraying splinters of wood. "Who are they?" William shouted, bracing against the dashboard as the truck jolted onto the service road. "Knox's enforcers," Jason growled, eyes hard. "They're here to make sure we don't talk." The Kenworth thundered down the cracked road, dust billowing behind them. The SUV roared in pursuit, high beams dancing across the trailer. Jason wrenched the wheel, veering onto an overgrown dirt track lined with scrubby mesquite. Branches slapped against the trailer, sparks flashing in the dark. "Are you insane?" William shouted, white-knuckling the door handle. "Better insane than dead," Jason shot back, switching off the headlights. The truck barreled through the night, guided only by pale moonlight and Jason's memory. Behind them, the SUV hit a deep rut and fishtailed, tires screeching. A heartbeat later, a crash echoed through the desert, the SUV slamming into a stand of twisted trees. Jason kept the truck moving for several minutes before easing to a stop near a dry wash. The engine ticked as it cooled, silence settling over the dusty night. Breathing hard, William turned to Jason. "You saved my life." Jason stared into the darkness. "Then let's make it worth something. You still want to fix your company?" William's jaw clenched, determination rising. "More than ever." Jason nodded once. "Then buckle up. This isn't over." The desert dawn broke over the ridgelines, pale light stretching across the highway like a new beginning. But William Perth had no time to admire it. He sat tense in the passenger seat of Jason's Kenworth, the engine's roar thrumming beneath them. The black SUV was back, headlights flashing in the mirrors, Knox's men determined to finish what they'd started. "They're closing in," William said, clutching Jason's backup phone, its signal flickering. Jason's eyes never left the road. 10 miles ahead, there's an old side road that cuts across the state line. Used to be used for smuggling runs. They won't see it coming. William tapped furiously, sending a scrambled voice message with everything they had uncovered. Notes from his journal, details from Jason's first-hand accounts, and recent dashcam clips Jason's rig had recorded during the chase. "Someone has to act on this," he muttered as he hit send. Jason's mouth twitched. "If they don't, we'll make them." They crossed into Nevada, dust rising in thick plumes behind them. Jason kept the Kenworth steady even as the SUV swerved in pursuit, high beams flickering like a threat. The truck's tires hummed over the cracked asphalt as dawn bled across the sky. "Up ahead," Jason said, voice tight. "Old way station. Used to train vets. Place has a tower with an emergency line." William frowned. "You think they'll follow us in?" "I'm counting on it." Jason whipped the Kenworth into a turn just past a blind curve, tires screeching as he maneuvered the rig between crumbling barricades and onto the cracked concrete of the abandoned way station. Rusted signs and shattered windows loomed around them, but the old comms antenna still stood tall. William grabbed his notebook from the cab, the one filled with every delay, every mistreated driver, every pattern he had pieced together on the road. He sprinted to the tower shack and connected to the emergency broadband. As he transmitted their data, dust rose on the horizon. As William uploaded the evidence through the tower's emergency broadband, the system's automated protocols flagged the transmission as a potential security threat due to keywords like theft, sabotage, and armed men. Within moments, the alert triggered a priority dispatch to local law enforcement, relaying their coordinates along with a brief summary of the flagged content. "They're coming," Jason shouted. The SUV burst into the lot, brakes screaming as it skidded to a stop. Two men in dark jackets jumped out, weapons glinting in the morning light. Jason stepped out from behind the Kenworth, hands raised but eyes calm. "Lost boys?" he called, voice sharp. They hesitated. Then William emerged beside him, holding up the notebook like a shield. "It's over. The proof's already sent." One man raised his gun, but froze as red and blue lights flashed over the ridge. For highway patrol cruisers poured down the access road, sirens splitting the morning calm. The gunmen lowered their weapons and dropped them as officers surrounded them. Jason exhaled, a small smile cracking his stern face. "Told you someone would listen." Hours later, in the fluorescent glare of a Nevada State Trooper outpost, William recounted everything. The undercover journey, Jason's story, the patterns of sabotage, and the final chase. Dashcam footage from Jason's rig confirmed the threats. His notebook's details matched truck logs and route records. That night, Darryl Knox was arrested at his Phoenix home, his side operation exposed. Several others were detained, dispatchers, corrupt mechanics, warehouse leads. The scheme had spread wide, but the evidence was undeniable. The next morning, William entered the Transway boardroom. His hair was unkempt, his flannel shirt still stained from the road. He stood tall at the head of the table. "I enabled this," he began, "because I chose easy answers over hard truths. I looked at numbers instead of people." He dropped the notebook onto the polished table. "I'm stepping down. Effective immediately." Gasps echoed around him. "I won't walk away. I'll advise. But this company needs someone who knows the road, not just the spreadsheets." 2 months later, on a repurposed Transway lot in New Mexico, the new Jason Mallory Center for Veteran Drivers opened its gates. Classrooms, simulators, and a full inspection station welcomed veterans ready for a fresh start. Jason stood beside William at the ribbon cutting, eyes bright with disbelief. "You didn't have to do this." William smiled. "That's where you're wrong." A group of veterans looked on, some grinning, others blinking back tears. Jason walked forward, clapping one on the shoulder, instantly back in instructor mode. William stepped aside, watching the man he'd once let down rebuild something stronger than either could have done alone. As the sun dipped behind the distant mountains, William sat on the back of Jason's Kenworth, the same truck that had saved his life, reflecting on the journey that had finally brought him face to face with the truth. He'd gone undercover to fix his company, but in the end, he discovered how to fix himself. This story reminds us that sometimes redemption doesn't come from success, but from listening, changing, and doing right by those we once wronged. What would you do if your second chance came from the person you hurt most? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more powerful tales like this. See you in the next video.